efficiently. Climate change should be a critical element in the formulation of policies. The disaster intervening capabilities should be developed. In our communities, we must enhance awareness in our household on how to respond to natural disasters. We must ensure that our municipalities have a particular level of preparedness to tackle a disaster. In the 7th administration, the government needs to closely measure and monitor the capability of the state in relation to disaster management capabilities and capacity. We must also implement a disaster-facing strategy which mitigates the risk of social and economic loss, and as efficient funding system which enables implementing agents to respond to a disaster. We need to also develop regional and continental disaster financing institutions to leverage the capacity of countries and to enhance the continent's ability to respond. Responding to apartheid. Spatial planning is another fundamental consideration in shaping development. In green development, planning is important as part of the philosophy and human settlement and land use planning. Another climate change risk is drought, which impacts many communities, particularly in rural areas. Dependence on subsistence farming, drought also negatively impacts on the agricultural sector. We must take decisive measures against deforestation, which is rampant in protected areas. We must strengthen law enforcement agencies to tackle the problem of deforestation, as the wood industry has risen due to load shedding. Honorable President and members, conserving our natural resources is critical for the sustenance of our resources and future generations to benefit from the wealth and the richness of our natural resources. Honorable members, economic development is local, and our municipalities should be at the center of creating an enabling environment for local economic development. Our municipalities' capability have spillover effect on local economic activities, and we believe that when we have effective planning at a local level, opportunities and many jobs can be created in communities where our people live. Honorable President, we should ask ourselves some critical questions if we are to respond to development at a provincial and local level. We must ask ourselves, when last did we adequately capitalize on provincial development financial institutions? We should also question whether such development agencies at the provincial and district levels are having a desired impact. We believe we need to support the agency and ensure it is capacitated with persons with the requisite skills and capabilities to manage development cooperation. Honorable members, long-term planning should not be a strategic function largely undertaken at the national level, but also at a provincial and district level. For the district development model to work efficiently, intergovernment planning should also be done at a conceptual level, not just to integrating plans. Long-term planning will enhance the predicability of policy, which enables a better proportion for long-term investments. The government of national unity creates opportunity to coalesce all social partners towards a developmental path, which will enable distribution, redress, transformation, and improved living conditions in our country. Tackling the high level of unemployment is a commitment the ANC has made to the people of South Africa. And through municipalities, our metros, and the province, we realize our commitment. We welcome the focus on addressing the financial structural factors impacting municipalities, mainly in rural areas and those revenue challenges. The bulk of challenges impacting South Africans on a daily basis is service provision to our communities. Yes, the cost of living and the overall economic environment alienates the youth and those above the age of 35 who are unemployed. We must ensure that our youth, women, and entrepreneurs are involved in manufacturing of construction sector input. We must leverage the infrastructure spending to We must leverage the infrastructure spending to also transform the linked value chain. We must be intentional with industrial development and localization. We believe that we can create many economic opportunities by supporting and investing local ecosystem in villages, townships, farms, schools, colleges, and civil society. Lastly, the African National Congress, we undertake a process of organizational renewal. This renewal is not for itself, but to persevere the ANC as an instrument in the hands of South Africans to transform their living conditions. Lastly, President, thank you,
Honourable Member. I will now call upon the Honourable the Minister of Tourism. The Honourable the Minister of Tourism.
Honourable House Chair, Honourable President and Deputy President, the May election was a major step in the realignment of South Africa's political landscape. The GNU is not the final destination. It's an important junction in the road. It has the ability to implement policies and programs that will strongly influence where our country heads next. The Good Party joined the GNU for two reasons. One, to contribute positively to the realignment process, and two, because the statement of intent was closely aligned to our policy pillars of social, economic, spatial, and environmental justice. When we enter cabinet meetings these days, we don't just leave our phones outside, but our party hats. We have a mandate rooted in the Constitution, directed by the approved policies and legislation, and led by the President. Outside of Cabinet, we will continue to be sensible, constructive, critical, and add value wherever we can. We want to be part of defining a better, more inclusive country. The GNU means putting politics aside and not wasting the opportunity. As the GNU, we must be careful not to structure our message as if nothing has been done in the past. We must not send out a message that the GNU had now discovered all the mistakes. The GNU ministers must know that when you inherit a department, you inherit it with the good and the bad, and you must fix it. When you are called to serve in the executive, you serve the people of the country, because the needs and the pain of our people knows no political affiliation. Madam Speaker, the fiscus is not in a good space. Therefore, all departments must introduce zero-based budgeting as we agreed in the 6th administration. We must do more with less. Mr. President, like Minister Park-Stow, I also want to quote your economic advisor, Ms. Marihana, in a book called Mission Economy, and I quote, "Government has bought into the ideology that their role is simply to fix problems, not achieve bold objectives. Government cannot limit itself to reactively fixing markets, but must explicitly co-shape the markets to deliver the outcomes society needs," close quote. Tourism is one of these bold objectives, to co-shape markets and ensure inclusive growth that create jobs for our people. And we are already busy with it. In 2023, the tourism sector grew by 49% compared to the previous year. Like Mr. President said, a demand-led approach to skills development will empower our people. I see tourism as an enabler that will absorb many unskilled and semi-skilled citizens in a growing and thriving tourism industry. Madam Speaker, we must not take the patience of our people for granted. Like weaver birds, what is left for the GNU now is to implement, implement, and implement. Lastly, I've been waiting long to say this. Honourable Minister Steenhuisen, always accused Minister Mackenzie of myself of working with the ANC. He can no longer accuse us of that. You are part of the ANC. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I will now call Honorable Chirwa from EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, Julius Sello Malema, EFF officials, commissars, the leaders of the Progressive Caucus, and sympathizers of the revolutionary movement in Africa that turns 11 years old on the 27th of July. To be young is to be in a stage of becoming, of working towards your goals and aspirations to transition from being dependent to independent. However, the youth of this country are perpetual children, and some will never know independence until their old age. At the realization of how doomed we are under your leadership, Mr. President, thousands continue to give in to Nyaupe, and young women and girls amount to bottle girls for you and your friends at the peak of their vibrancy and zeal for life and prosperity. We live with our parents, and finding a 40-year-old man asking his mother for bread is more common than otherwise. This phenomenon is known as the Ramaphosa economy. Joblessness, poverty, and constantly questioning if we are truly the young adults of today. In 2018, Mr. President, you launched a jobs summit and promised the youth of this country 275,000 jobs per year. You failed. In 2019, you promised 2 million jobs and an end to hunger, halving of crime, and empowering the school curriculum where a 10-year-old will be able to read for comprehension. You failed. In 2020, you unveiled a 100 billion rand fund to create jobs in the public sector for the youth. You failed. You launched the NSP against GBV and femicide, and 4 years later, on the eve of elections 2024, the murderer of Kirisaleti Elsin Donje was granted bail of 2,000 rands. You failed. In 2021, you spoke about building new cities, and the National Youth Development Agency would fund 1,000 young entrepreneurs in 100 days. You failed. In 2022, plagued by your own failures over the years, you promised the National Youth Service would create a modest 50,000 jobs in its first phase. You failed. In 2023, you came here and praised yourself for the Youth Employment Service that placed 100,000 youth in peace jobs that lasted nothing more than 12 months. Once again, you failed. Yesterday, you came to this house and promised 2 million jobs to the youth of South Africa. It is thus fair and deliberate to then say that this time next year, the result will once again be not achieved and failed. When you became president in 2018, youth unemployment was sitting at 43%. And nearly 7 years into your presidency, youth unemployment currently sits at 45% for individuals aged 15 to 34, and a whopping 59% for young people aged 15 to 24. Your presidency is characterized by many promises and many failures. It is now apparent that as the youth of today, we must ready ourselves psychologically like the youth of 1976 for the biggest fight against the establishment. The establishment has charged you, Mr. President, at the forefront as the weapon that is formed against us. The youth of today, like Nelson Mandela, who is now hailed as an icon of peace, must be ready to be called terrorists. We must be ready to be called criminals. We must be ready to be jailed for crimes we did not commit. We must be ready to be character assassinated like Idam Mntwana, Robert Sobukwe, Nkgopotshe Tiro, Steve Biko, Winnie Mandela, and Julius Malema. But amongst ourselves as the youth of this country, we know who the true criminals are. We know who stole our land from our grandmothers. We know who stole our mines. We know who stole COVID-19 funds that was meant to keep our people alive. We know who stole Tembisa Hospital money. We know who stole SAA, ISCO, Sasol, Telkom. We know who is now stealing Eskom, Transnet, PRASA, and even privatizing our water. All the while, you are creating an impression that these are natural disasters, despite the fact that they are orchestrated by the true criminals of the government of today, deployed by the Oppenheimers. We know who stole the money that is meant to eradicate pit toilets in the Eastern Cape. We know who stole NSFAS money. We know the mafias of the Steinhoff heist. We know the thugs of the Skills Development Fund. And we definitely know who the #1 money launderer is. There is absolutely nothing that the establishment, masquerading as a government of national unity, can do to deter us, the youth of today, from seeking out our generational mission. The government of the ANC has not fooled all of us. It is under the ANC that we saw privatization of state-owned entities at a large scale, much higher than that of the apartheid government. A trail of privatization that is so aggressive that even our health care isn't spared through the NHI. The rise of the establishment and the collapse of the state takes shape under the government of the ANC. That is the legacy of the ANC today. The positive outcomes of all of this neoliberal facade of the government of the day is that we now rightly characterize the neoliberal agenda encompassing of all its participants who are part of the GNU coalition. We now know who the enemy of economic freedom is. Even if in the past they pretended to be a part of us and spoke like the forefathers of the emancipation movement. The battle lines have been drawn. It is the subject of the Oppenheimer, the GNU coalition versus the people of South Africa. The youth of this country will continue to chant economic freedom in our lifetime. We will continue to present bills in this house that call for expropriation of land without compensation. We will continue to call for nationalization of mines, banks, and other strategic sectors. We will push back against your corruption and hold the captains of the ruling class accountable. We will fight for the scrapping of student debt and continue to call for quality, free, and decolonized education in our lifetime. We will continue to call for free healthcare, housing, water, and sanitation. We will continue to remind you that the young people in this country deserve real jobs. It's 6 months. We want industrial development, insourcing of security guards and cleaners, free pads, Mr. President, and all those rent manipulators to be arrested and to rot in jail. The people's power is rising in Africa, and we will not be left behind.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will now call upon the Minister of Communication and Digital Technologies.
House Chairperson, let me take you to church. The scripture reminds us that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the sun. This is the time for all patriotic South Africans to rise beyond the borders of our partisan, to join hands in working towards what is in the best interest of our country. The results of the 2024 elections delivered the season that needs real leaders to unite against the instability that our country has in order to fulfill the dream of a better life for all. So I speak on behalf of my colleagues that my party, the DA, is proud to be part of the government of national unity. We would rather be part of the solution that spurs South Africa towards prosperity rather than perpetuate the problems that deny millions of South Africans to live in a stable and thriving country. Unlike some Johnny-come-latelys who are masquerading as wannabe, red and camouflage socialists, having no shame while they are exhibitors of opulence gained through the proceeds of crime and corruption, we would rather find solutions to uplift poor South Africans out of poverty. Mr. President, the department you have mandated me to lead has the potential to unlock unimaginable opportunities for millions of South Africans through widening access to broadband connectivity so that no one is left behind. And by the end of this financial year, we will be able to connect approximately 2 million households through the public Wi-Fi hotspots program. And as part of our efforts to building a digitally inclusive society, we will be in a position to connect over 20,000 government facilities. These include over 4,000 health facilities, 16,000 schools, 900 traditional authorities from those of us who live under traditional leaders, and 570 libraries over the next 36 months. And notwithstanding this, there are major obstacles that are imposed by the overregulation that exists in the information and communication technology sector, which make it impossible to reliably connect millions of South Africans to the digital world. Smartphones and smart devices should be a basic essential for learning, doing business, and even for personal entertainment. Yet one of the most obvious inhibitors to connectivity is the cost of smartphones and devices. Their classification as luxury goods drives their prices to the extent that they are unaffordable for many South Africans. So to this end, Minister Godongwana, we will be engaging with you to consider the introduction of a price threshold for the determination of smartphones as a luxury good. Mr. President, we welcome what you said about the need to simplify legislation in order to encourage investment. We will become obsessed with making evidence-based decisions so that we remove every regulation and policy that impedes opportunities for investment and job creation in this sector. House Chairperson, progress is not linear. It is a series of small steps, sometimes forward, sometimes sideways. But we know that progress always endures turbulence. It attracts pessimism from doubting Thomases, and there are many in this House. But with every persistent effort towards prosperity, making progress is possible. So the digital universe needs to be able to connect to every single child in every village throughout our country. If we do this, we'll be able to discover a generation of geniuses that will spur innovation in the digital world. So I would like to challenge all the mobile network operators and telecommunications companies to work together with government to put devices in children's hands. And before I end with the scripture, Honorable Ndlozi and Honorable Bambo, have you really relegated your intelligence to trolling other members because of their wardrobe or height? Please do justice to your own intellect. But to end with the scripture, many are called, but few are chosen.
Honorable Minister,
the GNU has been chosen by people. Thank you.
Honorable members, the next speaker is the Honorable Councillor Stofile.
House Chairperson, the Speaker of National Assembly, the Deputy Speaker, the Chairperson of the NCOP, the President of the Republic, Umhlaba Uhlangene, Mzantsi Afrika, Sekela Mongameli welizwe lakwethu. Indeed, it is my honor and humbling privilege on behalf of the South African Local Government Association and the sector as a whole to welcome the opportunity given to us and also to be the first person to congratulate you on your elections. As a seventh administration that will take this country to the new heights. President of the Republic, South African Local Government Association and the entire 257 municipalities in the country feel so happy to hear the news that you announced yesterday that there will be a focus in changing the funding model of municipal system in the Republic of South Africa. And these news are news that comes after 24 years of struggle, led by Fathers Mangaliso Mkhatshwa, Amos Masondo, Thabo Manyoni, Parks Tau, Thembi Nkadimeng, Sebenzile Ngangelizwe, divorce, whom waged a struggle that ultimately there should be a different way that municipal system in South Africa is funded. And that made us to be very happy, to be quite honest, that ultimately that debate you have managed to close it. So I'm trying to say, at least as South African Local Government Association and the entire municipal system in the country, we feel proud about that and we are looking forward to the implementation. The second issue that, President, we wish to bring to your attention is our appreciation that ultimately there is a recognition in South Africa, and you've made it very clear in your opening statement yesterday, that the government must stop to operate in silos. And you said it is important that the government to ignite the cooperative nature that the government was betrothed to in South Africa. And this, it must be appreciated to us as South African local government, because it is indeed a problem that when the government operates in silos, it creates problems of lack of service delivery. Thereby your call to us, it means we must understand that we are a government that are elected, that's supposed to act as a single unit in responding to challenges of our people. I think, President, you then spoke directly to the words that were uttered by Dr. Nelson Mandela, the founder of our democracy, in 1996 when he addressed us as councillors. He said, we have the task of doing whatever is necessary to ensure that our new local government system serves the needs of our communities. You have the responsibility to make their voice heard and to provide an effective instrument for them to improve their lives, close quote. It is against this backdrop that we proudly join the President in calling on the Seven Administration to ensure that all spheres of government supports local government as the sphere closest to the people. Implementing this request, it is in line with our belief that in order to achieve a state that is capable of playing a developmental and transformative role, if we are serious about reversing the legacy of apartheid, local government is strategically positioned and a key pillar to play a fundamental role in building a capable state. We agree with the President that the role of municipalities, and in particular our cities, given their importance as engine for economic growth and job creation and dealing with the spatial transformation and legacy of spatial transformation is key. We do want to do this work. However, it adds that this should come with a particular focus and reflection on the powers and functions necessary to execute that mandate and why devolution and assignment is critical to the management of the integrated spaces. However, President, in respect of exploring opportunities for stimulating rural development, as detailed in your address, local government can play a meaningful role in the implementation of the effective and innovative development program. We therefore have high expectation that this seventh administration will find ways to reinforce rather than undermine the role of developmental local government so that municipalities can address poverty, inequality, and begin to develop rural communities. Having said this, while focusing our discussions on necessary ingredients for building a capable and developmental state, we should not and cannot ignore the current topical issues confronting the local government. Madam Speaker, whilst admirable progress has been made, substantial work remains to be done. During this 7th administration, frustration with the continuing lack of fundamental economic transformation and inequality are real. And the President has spoken to this when he was talking about economic growth. The 7th administration must therefore address the stubborn challenges that continue to bedevil the local government progress. These include governance and oversight challenges, including strengthening community involvement and ownership of development in municipalities, integrated development and safe, inclusive human settlement, in particular dealing with the key levers required to enable local government to effectively transform our municipal spaces and direct development, confronting our energy and infrastructure challenges, and making long-term sustainable choices. And that is why we appreciate Professor K. Ramokgopa and the department for interacting with us on issues of energy transition. Intergovernmental debt and rising consumer indebtedness, as well as the declining revenue base of municipalities, and linked thereto, the viability and long-term financial sustainability of the sector, local government. Safety and security of councillors, municipal officials, traditional leaders, and people that are representing the interest of our communities. I think, President, I've heard the Minister of Police, and I think it's a plan that we need to support in trying to fight the challenges. I think in this morning, afternoon, he raised some issues. We support the President's emphasis on cooperative governance. It is our respective submission as SALGA that the promulgation of the Intergovernmental Monitoring Support and Intervention Bill, which is currently at subject consultation, will create a standardized framework of the support to municipal system and thereby make municipalities to operate as a single unit in responding to our challenges. As I conclude, noting the details unpacked by the President in his address, the journey of local government in South Africa has been an impactful transition. We stand proud to support the commitment made by President and his cabinet. We must, however, say the course on policy is still long. It requires the unity, because united we can prosper. And the last issue to us, we must be careful of what I term it auto-deficiency syndrome, where systems begin to contest and destroy each other with no progress and prosper of our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Deputy Chairperson of the Council.
Thank you very much, House Chair.
Honourable Deputy Chairperson, will you just take a seat, please? I want to recognize the Honourable Ndlozi. Honourable Ndlozi.
House Chair, you are amending the program, ambushing us. We don't have this program of this speaker. And I think it would have been prudent either to share or explain rather than just ambush us. We have agreed times as to how long this debate must take place. Speakers have been released, and now there's someone here.
Yes, no, thank you, Honourable Ndlozi. The speakers list has been updated, and it's incumbent on the table staff to ensure that all the chief whips of party get the speakers list. The Honourable Deputy Chairperson of the Council is the next speaker. Honourable Deputy Chairperson, you may proceed.
How long does he have?
The Honourable Deputy Chairperson, will you proceed? Please get the speakers list to the Honourable members.
We didn't get, I started by saying we haven't received it.
Yes, they will ensure that you get it.
How long does he have?
Honourable Member, the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP will now proceed. Please ensure that the speakers list is provided to the whippery of the EFF.
Thank you very much once again, House Chair. the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, the Deputy President, National Speaker of the National Assembly, Deputy Speaker, House Chairpersons, the President of the Inkatha Freedom Party, the Honorable B.F. Slabisa, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, Mr. President, we want to extend our heartfelt condolences to the families of the 6 firefighters who tragically lost their lives in the KZN Midlands whilst bravely battling the R617 Boston Road fire. These were first respondents, Mr. President and colleagues. These are first respondents that risked their lives to save the lives of other citizens in our province. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and their families and the survivors, and we wish them a swift and speedy recovery. Yesterday, the Honorable Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs and the President of the Inkatha Freedom Party, the Honorable B.F. Slabisa, made statements in this House which have resonance with this joint sitting in starting a new chapter in our country's history. Undeniably, the title of this chapter is the Government of National Unity. From this chapter, our pages will be filled by one common theme of reshaping and the political landscape of our nation and leading to the molding of a coalition government that reflects the collective will of the South African electorate. Honorable House Chair, the IFP's unwavering commitment to the Government of National Unity serves as a testament to our principled dedication to the well-being of our nation. We have always been a party that prides itself on constructive engagement, rooted in a belief in unity and progress for the betterment of our country. As IFP, we pledge to never let go of the values of servant leadership. Our participation in the NGU means that we now have a greater responsibility of transparency, accountability for the upliftment of all South Africans. We are undoubtedly called by a diverse group of South Africans to find each other, reconstruct the fabric of our society, and rebuild the nation's pride. The legacy of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, characterized by statesmanship and advocacy, continues to resonate within the chambers of this parliament. His steadfast commitments to justice and equity stands as an enduring example for all those who seek to serve our nation. As we navigate the complexities of the changing climate and socio-economic landscape, the IFP's advocacy for responsive government and tangible outcomes resonates deeply. It is our resolve to foster a stable and effective GNU that should be a testament to the unwavering belief in the transformative power of collaboration and collective action. I thank the President of the country for recognizing the poor condition of eThekwini's infrastructure. Mr. President, I grew up in eThekwini. This is the only metro in KwaZulu-Natal and is the economic hub of our province. Sadly, it is no longer the shining gem it once was. But I feel encouraged by the Government of National Unity that has found traction in the province, and the commitment by the President in his address last night to restore eThekwini to his former glory. Mr. President, I will hold you to that. Emphasis must be placed on the continued and far-reaching impact of natural disasters on the lives of the vulnerable communities in KwaZulu-Natal, which requires better intergovernmental coordination to effectively address prevailing challenges. The National Disaster Management Center should strive to ensure that all provinces meet a minimum set of requirements in disaster response readiness, addressing the current unevenness in provincial capabilities. The sets of standards are not a one-shoe-fits-all, but must rather be a response to the individual needs of each province. And whilst reference has been made to KwaZulu-Natal, in this instance, we must not forget other provinces who have been through climate change and natural disasters. It is imperative that all stakeholders in the disaster response chain act urgently, align with the gravity of the national disasters, and be able to respond to those communities who have been affected. While we acknowledge the recent commencement of the 7th dispensation, we express gratitude to the KwaZulu-Natal Premier, the Honorable A.T. Ntuli, and his cabinet for their commendable response to disasters in the region. Honorable members, the NGU will face judgment by the people of this country in providing services, and this is the essence of why we are in this type of government. We must not fail our people. And as the government of national unity, we must commit to ensure that the needs of the people come first. Servant leadership must be the cornerstone of everything that we do. And I thank you, Honorable President, honorable members.
Thank you. Next speaker is the Honorable Shavambu.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson, Commander-in-Chief. In the struggle for total economic emancipation in the entire African continent, the leadership of the Progressive Caucus here in the 7th Parliament. Let me do what should have been done by now and acknowledge the presence of former President Jacob Gedleyihlekisa Zuma in our presence here in Parliament today. President, we had said in the budget vote on national treasure that we, as the economic freedom fighters, stand categorically opposed to the government, the so-called government of national unity. We correctly stated that a sensible approach should have been to construct a revolutionary government, a progressive government of forces whose umbilical cords are buried in the same yard. Maybe we're wrong to think that and believe that we share a common heritage and perspective with those that chose to constitute a government with neoliberal and neo-colonial forces. Instead of constituting a progressive government, the president of the ANC assembled the bloated executive of open-armor puppets, of semi-literate matriculants, of apartheid apologists, of ex-convicts, of waffling careerists, and called them a government of national unity. That was what we're dealing with now. And as if that is not enough, he comes here yesterday, he calls them beds, sunyenyani. Seyifambiswa imfumo wa sunyenyani, izinyoni, uhulumeni wezinyoni, umbuso wadinonyane. That is what we're dealing with. So he likened this government as government of sociable weaver beds, which are well known for building sophisticated nests. But one thing that you must know about birds is that only those that look like each other flock together. They identify with each other. However sophisticated and beautiful the nest that they build will be, they will never even allow the most peaceful of birds, a dove, to enter that nest. So this social weaver needs birds that you are bragging about and speaking about here will always associate with themselves. Maybe you are correct that that is what we intend to achieve as a social weaver birds, 75 birds in the executive, bloated executives, 77, which are supposed to be government of South Africa, who are supposed to be constituting a government. Now, on the 15th of July 2024, the National Film and Video Foundation, the NFVF, issued a call for South Africans to nominate people who must receive the awards for the South African Film and Television Awards. I want to propose here, House Chairperson, that we should nominate Mr. Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa for the SAFTAS Awards for Best Fiction.
If there is no such a category, we must introduce a category of even a Lifetime Achiever Award on fiction, because everything else that it represents is just fictions. So the NFVF, Minister of Arts and Culture, is a very important instrument in the Department of Arts and Culture. So before you introduce the sporting code of spinning mostly stolen cars, you should pay attention to the NFVF so that you can deal with all of these issues clearly. That is what we're dealing with. Now, the nomination is based on the following fact. In 2018, after the coup d'etat, which we regrettably supported as the EFF, what Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa said, he said, we are determined that expropriation without compensation should be implemented in a way that increases agricultural production, improves food security, and ensures that the land is returned to those from whom it was taken under colonialism and apartheid. Did that happen? No. He said again that starting this year, free higher education and training will be available to first-year students from households with a combined gross income of 350,000. Is that happening? There's no free education in South Africa. He said that we're going to forge ahead with the localization program through which products like textile, clothing, furniture, rail rolling stock, and water meters are designated for local procurement. Do we have got local procurement in South Africa out of those products? No. He further said that we're going to improve our capacity to support black professionals, deal decisively with companies that resist transformation. Is it dealing with that? No. He further said that moving forward, young South Africans will be moved to be at the center of the economic agenda. Are young people at the center of our economic agenda? No. He even further said that government will honor its undertaking to set aside at least 30% of public procurement to small, medium, and macro enterprises, cooperatives, and township and rural enterprises. Is such happening? No. He even said that it's going to accelerate the land redistribution program, not only to redress the grave historical injustice, but also to bring more producers into the agricultural sector and to make more land available for cultivation. Is that happening? No. So this person deserves a lot of awards. The closing date of that nomination for SAFTA's Awards for Best Fiction is the 9th of August. Let's make sure we nominate him so that he is awarded for all these fictions. Yesterday he came here to even add to a lot of fictional imaginations, claiming 2 million jobs that are not there. Leave the 2 million jobs whom we said you have created yourself. There are no 2 million jobs that were created since you took over as a president yourself in South Africa. Where does the 2 million come from? It only comes from the figments of your imagination. It comes from your creative writing skills, which you must be awarded for in terms of what is expected. Now, even if these fictions were possible, there is no money to finance such. Currently, we have got debt obligations of upward of 5 trillion rands. We expend 384 billion rands on debt service costs. That is the biggest expenditure item on the budget of South Africa. And that debt is rising. From your cabinet, the cabinet of Bays, you came, the only thing that you changed was to say from medium-term strategic framework to medium-term development programs. But the content and the essence of what your government stands for has not changed. You have not even made a commitment that are going to move away from the debt obligations that characterizes the state. Now let's call in Thomas Isidore and Noel Sankara. He says that debt is neocolonialism, in which the colonizers have transformed themselves into technical assistants. We should rather say technical assassins. Under its current form, control dominated by imperialism. That is skillfully managed reconquest of Africa, intended to subjugate its growth and development through foreign rules. That is what is the trajectory of this government, the continuation of debt obligations that are not sustainable. We are going to give a far much more substantial perspective of what is to be done moving forward. But one issue that we want to highlight is that South Africa should optimally utilize its strategic partnerships with countries in the BRICS Forum, Brazil, Russia, China, and India. And of course, now added the UAE, Ethiopia, and all these other countries. Now, if you were to check what Ethiopia got to benefit out of its strategic partnership with the People's Republic of China, is that over the past 15 years, Ethiopia's economy has grown average of 10%. They built a railway from Addis Ababa to Djibouti, which is a neighboring country, which is coastal, of 759 kilometers, to lead an export-led industrial development manufacturing plan, which is reducing poverty, is giving jobs to our people. That is what is happening in that, and that is through proper, meaningful usage of strategic partnerships with countries that relate with. The Commander-in-Chief is correct that when you exclude the global balance of forces in trying to design domestic politics, you will completely miss the point. You will never achieve anything domestically without locating it within the global economy. South Africa, this is not going to go anywhere. They disagree on everything, on Bella Bill, on NHI, on the source of energy. These ones of the DA, even those who are leading the department, are saying that we must discontinue coal. You can't discontinue coal in South Africa as a source of electricity. We have to have a clear agenda. There is no developmental state that is not based on a common, sound, ideological perspective. All developmental states must be founded on a sound ideological basis. And what we have created now is confusion, which is going to take South Africa backward. And that is what we stand. But we are inspired that the Progressive Caucus is going to take South Africa forward and take political power from this government of national confusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honourable members, the next speaker is the Honourable Mr. Lakis.
Honourable House Chair, even though some in this House are still in denial, the fact remains that South Africa now has a government of national unity in place. They can launch frivolous court challenges to contest the fact, but that will not stop those on this side of the House getting on with the business of government and delivering for all South Africans. House Chair, as we celebrate the GNU, we must ensure that Parliament remains robust. Without debate, without constructive criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. Parliament is a separate branch of government, independent of the executive and the judiciary. Part of our constitutional mandate is to hold the executive to account. The opposition does not have a monopoly on this role. In a robust democracy, the active participation of backbench MPs from all parties is vital as it adds value to the legislative oversight role of Parliament. So, Mr. President, it's up to us as Parliament to ensure that the strategic objectives put before us last night are monitored by every committee, that we get the public engaged, and that we help where we can to make it succeed. And we will do the same to ensure that laws passed in this House create the freedom and the jobs we need. We will help your executive to deliver on this by holding them to account and monitoring their progress every step of the way. We must make this Parliament and this government of national unity work, because there is no real alternative. House Chairperson, when the Honourable Malema in 2014 started taking all the EFF speaking time for himself, I thought I would never hear anything more boring. I was proven wrong this morning when we all lost 30 minutes of our lives that we will never get back. Because for something to be a meaningful contribution, it has to not only be constructive but also intelligent and entertaining. What we have heard this morning from the Leader of the Opposition today, pulling the strings from the gallery. The man who, apart from all the looting, was once responsible for the largest cabinet in the world, Honourable Mokoena. And then we have the EFF, Overalls serving as a cover-up for the empty Gucci suits paid for by starving gogos whose money went into VBS Bank. And as I have said before in the other House chairperson, if the MK and the EFF is the future, Mr. President, the future is not very bright. Dan het ons ook die agbare Adams, wat duidelik nog ontsteld is oor die feit dat hulle sy voel gevat het.
Honorable member, will you take your seat, please? Please pass the mic to the honorable member.
Chairperson, you see, we have respect.
What is your point of order?
Listen, Chairperson, we just want to put this thing into perspective.
Honorable
We
members.
must respect our leader, and we're not going to actually have
Honorable
a
members.
white man coming here to disrespect our
Honorable
leader
member,
in front of us.
it's not a
That
point
we
of
must
order.
actually say, it's not a point of order.
It's
We're
not
doing
a point of order.
Even a white boy is going to come here and disrespect our
Please
leader
take your
in a
seat.
manner that is actually doing.
Honorable
that is
member,
going to be
please take your seat. Honorable member, please look at the rules of the joint sitting. You cannot get up and just start a speech. You rise on a point of order, you say what your point of order is, and then a ruling will be made. So please do not do that again. Follow the rules. Please continue, honorable member.
Thank you, House Chairperson. So many buttons were pushed there. Terug by die agbare Adams se voel. Agbare lid, jy moet na jou voel kyk. Ek sou my geskaam het as ek jy was.
Honorable Michaelakis, please take your seat. Yes, honorable member. Honorable members, I can't hear the speakers from the floor. If you also comment, so please give me a fair chance to be able to make a ruling.
To be insulted by a white man led by an illiterate is a crown we wear with pride.
No, honorable member, that's not a point of order. Please proceed, honorable member.
Thank you, House Chair. But there is hope, Honourable House Chair, for those who have been seeking opportunity and real freedom. There were some breakthrough announcements by the President last night that the DA has put on the table over the past few years, suggestions that will get South Africans into jobs again. Mr. President, thank you for including these constructive suggestions that we agree on, and thank you to the millions of South Africans who backed these initiatives, such as the review of the fuel price model, the increased basket of VAT-excluded food items, to abolish cadre deployment and end political interference in the public service, and the release of state land as a priority for meaningful land reform, to mention a few. House Chairperson, we have to make the GNU, in defense of our Constitution, work, because the alternative is simply too ghastly to contemplate. We wish the President and his executive well in this mammoth task. We do so with one message, Mr. President. Where you should be held accountable, you will find a Parliament that stands ready to do its oversight duty as required by the people of this country. And where you act in their interest, you will find us standing behind you in support. We wish you and this government well. Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honourable Bobane. Order, honourable members.
Honourable Chair, Honourable Speaker, I rise here in respect of the son of the soil, the only patriot in this country, the dedicated servant of this country who has served the people of this country with dedication, President Zuma, President Jacob Gedleyihlekisa Zuma. So we'd like to thank you for coming and then to see your team performing today, President. Thank you very much for coming.
On another note, I would like to convey a message of condolences to a family member of the DMV who passed on yesterday. A lot of military veterans in this country are not treated as the veterans of the other color. So we pay convenience. The member passed on yesterday at the on the 18th of July. Antonio Gramsci, in his prison writings, Cultural Hegemony, describes how the state and the ruling capitalist class used their power and state machinery to suppress the same people they claim to be representing. This is evident with the former ruling party, ANC, and Gramsci calls it a pitfall of national consciousness. History has taught us that liberation movement in Africa becomes irrelevant to the society after 30 years in power. Typical examples is Chama Chama Mapinzo, a party that was led by late Julius Mwalimu Nyerere in Tanzania, Frelimo in Mozambique, led by late Samora Machel, SWAPO in Namibia, led by the late Semnu Joma and Andimbo, Toivo ya Toivo, and the last one to be rejected is the ANC of Ramaphosa on the 29th of May. The people of South Africa said it loud and clear to the ANC. They say, Hamba ANC, asisakufuni. They gave you below 50%, which means you fail the society of South Africa. On the 29th of May, it was the people of South Africa that decided their fate, not the market, as usually you used to say, that it's a market that you respect more than the people who voted for you. And as usual, Mr. President, you started to use Chapter 9 institution, IEC, which is not independent anymore, but rather became the subcommittee of the ANC to do your dirty job. What happened to the ANC, to the IEC? We were there, we were watching. The IEC is riddled with loophole. It needs to either be reformed, revamped, and be redone from scratch. That institution, all political parties are only able to monitor it on the voting day and on the counting day only. Anything else from there, on capturing of the slip, on auditing, you need to know this because you don't know about the IEC institution that you are running. It's riddled with loopholes, and from there onwards, the officials, they do as they please. They capture numbers that do not tally with the slip, and they are not monitored. That's why, as the MK, we do not recognize this president, because the election was stolen. That institution, you can see one of the executives is Dr. Masego. It doesn't audit its executive. A member stole millions in the bank, but the member comes and works for the IEC. The whole of that institution does not vet its staff. They are all full on there, working unvetted because they do the bidding for the ANC. With all the evidence we provided to the IEC, we did everything in our power. We provided every evidence, and then we're still going to challenge that in court through and through. We're not going to give up on that. The GNU, abakufuni ku-GNU. because you were blocking the IPPs. Abakufuni tata. The GNU is a group of people who are trying to protect the president that his time has passed. It is ballooned, and the president says he needs to save cost, and there is no money in the country, but you are busy ballooning the executive.
Order, honorable members. Order.
On your speech, Mr. President, you spoke about inclusive economic growth. Whatever name it is, there's no inclusive growth that you've ever seen. Most of the business people that I know in the middle classes, they are not included in your economic growth. You are busy assisting the monopolies to grow in their economies, but our SMMEs and our middle class business people are at poverty. You've neglected the poorest of the poor. You spoke about the reduction of poverty. There's no reduction of poverty. In your tenure, the poverty has escalated. The high cost of living of our people is so expensive. There's no reduction of poverty, and the tackling of cost of high living, you haven't done it. You have failed even on that one. You spoke about redistribution of wealth. Wealth is not being redistributed. There are no opportunities for black middle-class poor people, worse, the ones at the lowest level. In your speech, there is too much we will, we will, we will. It's empty promises as usual. The will stands for promises, as people say in politics, but yours are empty promises. Remember, Mr. President, the first openings of Parliament in your presidency, how you were dramatic with a Tumamina song of Hugh Masekela, telling people that you will remove the red tapes, you will remove the barriers to entry in business. You said you will restructure the economy. You said you'll reduce the monopolies in our economy. It was dramatic, but today all we see are those we will again, which are flat. You said we are simplifying the regulations on public-private partnerships to enable greater investment in both social and economic infrastructure development. You must explain it. How is this going to be done to us as people? As the government of national unity, your government of national unity, you said we are resolved to intensify on our investment drive, encouraging and enabling business to invest in productive capacity. And your investment conference has yielded nothing out of all of this. You spoke of trillions and trillions in these investment conferences, but there is nothing. Instead, the country is deep in debt. You spoke about red tape debilitates the creation of jobs. Every department and every public entity has been directed to reduce the undue regulatory burden that holds black businesses from creating jobs. Where is this directive? You speak about a directive that you will say the department must remove the red tapes. There's no directive that you will issue, Mr. President, to these entities. It's just a cheap talk and a cheap talk that you say. There's nothing, no directive, nothing that you've given to this department. Where's the EPWP? The EPWP, you've used it for electioneering. We've seen it in KZN after finishing the voting. It was cancelled again.
Order, honorable members. Order.
You see, President, I cringe when I cringe because I know this has nothing to do with the people of South Africa. All these things you are saying. Even the investment you speak about that you're going to invest in Africa and above, it's all a cheap talk. All what we're going to see is monopolies going to Zambia's, opening malls and opening ShopRite and Clicks, but there's no black people of ours that will go out in the Africa and invest. Your speech, Mr. President, was hollow, it was cheap talk, and there was nothing that we can applaud you on. You wasted our time yesterday, completely wasted our time. Instead, Mr. President, if you wanted our black people that you want to push to the African country, you must push the trip, business people that are selling shoes. You must push the Batu to Africa to open the market for them. You must push the Xhosa clothing brand, the gentlemen that sell Xhosa clothing. You must push the brand, the Zulu clothing brand. You must push the Tsonga shoes. There's a gentleman who sells the Tsonga shoes. Those are the people you must push when you go and invest in the brands in Africa. But you are failing again to do that. You only push the monopolies, the ShopRite, the Pick and Pays, all the Stellenbosch. They've opened all the businesses in Africa and abroad, and you leave our people here, and you don't push them to go open the business in the African countries. So your speech was hollow. It's not bringing hopes to our people, and it doesn't give us anything to benefit from. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members, I now invite to the podium the Honorable Minister of Electricity and Energy.
Thank you very much, House Chair. And my warm and sincere greetings to Honorable President Ramaphosa, Honorable Deputy President Paul Mashatile. I must say that 12 minutes can be a very, very, very long time when you don't know what to say. And I want to say the following to the previous speaker, that I think he'll be served exceptionally well by directing the arguments against the IEC to the Electoral Court. So I really want to pursue you, not to withdraw the case, but to pursue that case, and hopefully you'll be able to prevail. So on the occasion of the inaugural Lekgotla of the 7th administration, the President made an inspired decision to invite one of the most preeminent and prolific political economy scholars in the country, Mr. J.P. Landman. Mr. Landman delivered a compelling paper, and that paper is titled "From Crisis to Opportunity, a Path to Sustainable Growth." And that decision is inspired at two levels. The first one was it is important that we are able to invite outside parties who will be able to provide a critical analysis, a critique of the performance of the South African economy in this instant, and we are able to get better insights on how best to improve the situation going into the future. And what Mr. Landman did was to compute a longitudinal study of the South African economic performance over an extended period of time. And he was able to illustrate that that period is punctuated by a number of tectonic events. And these events include the Great Depression of 1929, the crisis, the oil crisis of the 1970s, the financial crisis of 2008, and the most recent headwinds of COVID-19 of 2019, amongst others. And he was able to illustrate that they were on a correct path, but there are things that requires our collective attention. And in his own independent computation, contrary to what has been shared before us here, was that we have returned to pre-COVID levels from a position of, if you had to use multiple matrices, including the issues around jobs, that we have been able to claw back those jobs, although we still have a lot to do for us to be able to address this situation. But it's also important because there has to be a greater appreciation that, unlike what has been deposited here by Dr. Hlophe, he makes the point that the scholars of political science suggest that the government of national unity are only constructed to respond to an emergency or a crisis. I want to suggest to you that there is more contemporaneous studies that suggest that it's not only about emergency or crisis, but the possibility of collectively pursuing an opportunity that presents in the context of a geopolitical crisis. I am making this point because, as the good doctor will know, is that we've got both an intellectual and academic responsibility to surface alternatives and, if you like, counter views when we posit an argument. And in fact, what we have done amounts to, if you like, an intellectually and academically incompetent argument. And I'm saying that with the greatest of respect. So it's important that we are able to pull this together. And then the issue of the GNU. I must say that the African National Congress entered into this arrangement and it has not lost its character. We have always and remain of the following view in our characterization of the South African conflict, that is underpinned by three interrelated and antagonistic contradictions of race, class, and gender. And the resolution of this question gets to be articulated in the most substantive fashion in the crisp apex priorities of this seventh administration. And I want to say to Honorable Maimane that we are not all over the place. We simply identify the three priorities. I'll unpack those. As I confront what I refer to the Malema oxymoron. What do I mean by the Malema oxymoron? So it is acceptable for the EFF to enter into an arrangement with the DA and other parties to displace the ANC in Tshwane, Ekurhuleni, and Johannesburg. But when we do that, we get to be labeled. The oxymoron goes further. He makes the following point. He says that this is a sellout arrangement. And essentially what President Matamela Ramaphosa delivered yesterday was authored by the Oppenheimers. And then in the same argument, he says, but this is a repeat of what Matamela Ramaphosa has been saying all along. So this articulation really belongs to us. Is the originality of this. So that is the oxymoron I'm referring to. Let me go to the substantive issues. The first issue on inclusive growth and job creation. The President Ramaphosa makes the following point, that there is a need for us to beneficiate the minerals. Honorable Shivambo says that the geopolitical consideration should be factored in the speech. Of course, there's an undercurrent of that in his articulation. What do we know about the clean conversation about the just transition? We know that the Western industrialized North are likely going to introduce artificial barriers in the form of carbon border adjustment mechanisms. So it is important that for us to protect our industry, that the generation that support the production of these products that serves the Western and industrialized markets should come from cleaner forms of technology. And what do we know about the possibility of clean forms of technology? Is that we have to have an appreciation of the entire value chain. That there are minerals that constitute what I refer to as the battery economy. So this is cobalt, nickel, copper, rare earth elements, PGMs, to mention but a few. And a significant number of those are found here. And that's why on the back of an industrial policy, having concluded the cadastral system that Minister Mantashe is referring to, we are able to articulate in the most comprehensive and coherent manner what these opportunities present as we evolve towards the electric cars, the displacement of an internal combustion engine to be replaced by electric vehicles. South Africa's market is much bigger than that's the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, but the possibilities goes beyond. And when you go to the issues around green hydrogen, the appreciation is even much better. They're hard to abate sectors. We are sitting with those endowments, and South Africa is sitting pretty to exploit these opportunities going into the future. So that sits in that articulation of President Ramaphosa. Just a few months ago, we got to be accused that the kind of progress we're making, spectacular progress, in the resolution of the preeminent and existential question that was facing the South African economy, that of load shedding. We are accused as we're moving closer to the election, by all quarters, by the way, that this is an election gimmick, that in fact, after the elections, load shedding will come back. And in fact, the leader of the EFF, Honorable Malema, he was even prophetic. And he said on the 29th of May at 10, the lights will go off. We are 113 days today without load shedding. And when I was advised that respond to this question. When I looked deep, I said it doesn't warrant a response. But in fact, what it calls for is education. It's a very complex engineering question to understand. And I'm going to give myself time to be able to educate you so that there's a greater level of appreciation. But we also, on the issues of reducing poverty and tackling high cost of living, President Ramaphosa makes the point about expanding the flow of the social wage. When I'm talking about the social wage, I'm not only talking about transfers. The 340 SRD grant is the threshold of water and electricity that we give to the poor. And the zero rating, the expansion of the zero VAT rating of the basket of food. President Ramaphosa refers to that in his articulation. Surely, someone who defends and expands the social wage can't be a sellout. He's someone who's on the side of the poor and doing everything to ensure that we address this question. I want to say, as I move closer to conclusion, that we are going to protect also the interest of the poor to the extent that their wages and their disposable income is eroded by the exponential increases with regards to electricity tariffs. And it is at this point that we are going to super exploit our renewable endowments in the form of the sun and the wind speeds that are found in the Cape provinces. And in this way, we are able to green faster, cheaper, more affordable, and we are able to achieve universal access as we continue the agenda of reindustrializing the South African economy, as we articulate a comprehensive economic growth policy undergirded by an industrial policy and an energy policy, and we'll be coming out to articulate the integrated energy plan going into the country. And the last one is around building a capable, ethical, and developmental state. The turnaround, as an example, that we're seeing in ESCOM, is not an act of miracle. It is a deliberate, calculated, orchestrated engineering effort to respond to an existential problem on the economic front by competent men and women of ESCOM who are diligent. Chalmers Johnson, one of the most foremost scholars on the political economy of countries, when he studies the Asian tigers, he makes the point that what is common about those Asian tigers is that the state was never in retreat. The state led the developmental agenda and was able to aggregate all of society, including business, behind a common agenda. The second one he makes is a concentration of pockets of excellence, what we call SOEs, those are the major drivers. We're able to push back state capture at ESCOM, and that's why the lights are on. It's because of the honest men and women. But that's not only restricted to the public sector. The private sector also has an obligation, and we can see the decimation, the devastation that has been visited on VBS. The poor who have spent all of their savings with the intention of retiring happy, their lives were destroyed by the greedy and those who don't have the interests of the poor at heart. As I conclude this, I want to say the following, drawing from the counsel of President Mandela. He has the following to say: difficulties break some men, but make others. No axe sharp enough to cut the soul of a man who keeps on trying, one armed with hope that he will rise even in the end. And I'm confident that with this GNU will deliver the results for our people. President O.R. Tambo makes the point. On the occasion of the burial of Joe Kavi, he says the future is bright, the end is glorious, the intervening period is dark and bitter, but finds glory in acts of struggle. The GNU will deliver us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Order, Honourable Members. Order, Honourable Members. Order, Honourable Members, please take your seats. Thank you. Honourable Members, that brings us to the end of the list of speakers for today. The reply by the Honourable President is scheduled for Monday morning at 10 a.m. That is on the 22nd of July. That concludes the business for the day, and the joint sitting is adjourned.